Okay. So maybe you could start by introducing yourself and what your religious affiliation is.
Sure. Um, so I'm Faith Sandler, and I am an Episcopalian.
And how observant would you say you are?
I would say I am pretty observant, so I probably attend a service weekly, either in person or online, and I serve on the vestry, which is like the board of directors of the church that I attend, and I'm join in civic or political activities that the church engages in. So all of the above.
Um, how would you say that your religious beliefs have impacted your life as a whole, not necessarily politically?
I would say that they impact my life in that they're a strong sense of connection to family, ritual, family, the way we mark the passing of seasons or lives. So mostly that. So I understand the world not only through a religious perspective, of course, but it's a helpful framework for community life.
Sure. Yeah. Um, and more specifically, in terms of your political ideology, how has your religion um, shaped that?
Okay, so I have a complicated answer to that. The first answer is not at all. And that is because I have this strong conviction to a separation of church and state, religion and civic life. Um, However, I prefer a congregation of any variety to be engaged in community life and a sense of responsibility to the entirety of the community. So it's both.
Yeah, that's something in doing this project that I've sort of been thinking of is if we do have this separation of church and state, then what role should religion play in politics? I feel like the way that religion has impacted my own life is just through like my values and
Right.
morals, ethics, whatever. And obviously that's what politics is. So I feel like the more I think about it, those two things are kind of
I
intertwined.
agree with you completely. Where I've had some debate, for instance, the church where I go to has a pastor who's really active in the Fight for 15 movement, a strong labor supporter, active in street level protest. But he and I have debated a number of times because if he goes up to Jefferson City to, for instance, talk about Medicaid expansion or the Fight for 15, he will take the predominant religious view of the legislature. If they quote the Bible,
Yeah.
he'll give them his progressive and in his way more theologically sound interpretation of the same biblical passage or the same story. And I've said that's out of place. Like you're not going up there to be their pastor or to practice your religion publicly. That's not the point. You can be called by your sense of morals or values or beliefs to take action, but the action that you take is not about a particular creed or
Yeah.
not out loud anyway, because I think that just subscribes it, especially in Missouri, it helps subscribe to an underlying anti-Muslim, anti-Semitic, anti-immigrant, anti-atheist
Yeah.
mentality, where and a white Christian male supremacy mindset, and he's just white Christian and male, so he can play. Even if he plays for a different purpose, I want him to play without the religious overlay. I don't think it belongs. So
Yeah. Oh, I definitely get what you're saying, especially in a place like Missouri where we are so conservative and then also majority Christian, I believe. Like, how do you
Hmm. Right,
tie together? Yeah. And I
right.
think through a few specific issues, obviously, they've had an especially strong influence, like abortion rights and
Yeah, yeah.
rights, which kind of feeds into my next question. Do you think that your religious beliefs, if any, have had a strong influence on any specific issues that you could pinpoint? Um, just through your values, I guess.
Yeah, but it's so the problem that I have when you say religious beliefs is sometimes I think sectarian. And some of the things I'm going to cite, I think appear in almost every major religion's sacred text somewhere. So, for instance, are we still connected? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. For instance, a fundamental belief that we are all God's children probably has a different way of saying it in many faiths, but I don't believe that anybody's outside the tent or outside the club. Or do unto others as you would have them do unto you appears, I think, in like 6 or 8 different major religions texts in one version or another. So I don't think of that as much as a specific sectarian religious belief as a fundamental moral,
Sure.
and it can be spiritual as well as moral, but when I'm going to argue for healthcare for all or tearing down the wall at the border or racial equity, I don't need, like, whatever my sense of God is can keep me company in the struggle, but I don't need to push that on anybody else.
Sure.
So,
My hypothesis was just that people with strong religious convictions, um, I thought maybe would tend to be more politically engaged. So I think those like tenets that could apply to any religion work in this case because it's just, yeah, having that conviction and
yeah.
those values. But yeah, about that, would you say that your religious beliefs have furthered you to be more engaged in politics, not in any specific way? And if so, how?
I'm thinking. I'm not sure I would say that, Vera. I'm
Okay.
not sure I would say that. It's hard for me to separate, things about the way I was raised.
Mhm.
So there are things about the way I was raised that my parents would probably say were religious practices or beliefs in nature. Um, I don't necessarily, I think of them as humanist more than theological most of the time. Like, I just don't. There are stories in every faith tradition that people use to organize their beliefs and thoughts. They're less important to me than the actual beliefs and thoughts. So,
And just curious, have you always been um, a Democrat and also
yeah,
Christian?
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, I don't think I could ever say I was anything else. I might sometimes have been tempted to want to be a democratic socialist or something, but I think probably most of the time, all of the time, if you pulled up my voting record, that's what you would see. And if you had to predict my position on any particular issue, it would be way over on the D side, on the left end of the D side.
Yeah, I would
You
have been
know,
surprised if you had said.
right, right. Can't hide it.
Yeah. And you already answered this a little bit, but how do your politics compare to that of your church?
I think I think my politics are consistent with that of my church, except that I would say that my job puts me in touch with a lot more younger people than attend my church. And so sometimes my politics are more challenging or questioning of the status quo than the average churchgoer, because they all live through a particular period that they're still in. Like, they marched in the 60s, there was a right way to do civil rights, they don't want people burning things down right now kind of thinking. Like it all stopped at the moment that they were activists. So I think that I'm lucky that I get to learn from people who are coming up now.
Sure. Yeah. What do you think has been like the biggest factor in shaping your political identity?
Shaping what?
Your political ideology.
Probably really my love of education and learning, and my belief always that that process makes us better human beings and in touch with each other better than we are if we've quit learning, frankly. So probably it's more about education for me than formal religion. Does that make any sense?
Yeah. No, I get it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, well, that is all the
Are
questions.
you talking to anybody who's way on the other side?
I wish that I was, but I mean, my parents don't have any control.
They don't know anybody?
Not
Okay.
really. But I have, if you know anyone, maybe I could reach out to them.
Yeah, let me think about it, because you're asking really good questions, and I think you should have somebody whose answers would be more like fundamentalist Christian. I can think of one or two people. They might talk your ear off, though. So let me I'll email you. Is email an okay way?
That's good.
I'll email you a few thoughts, and then if you say, oh, I'd love to talk to that person, then I'll send an email
Okay.
that
Yeah.
connects the two of you, and then you can follow up.
Yeah, I'm really looking to have people from all sides of the spectrum. So.
Okay.
Well, yeah,
Okay.
I had this issue this entire summer where I just keep talking to Democrats.
Mm-hmm. Well, and have you watched, I'm sure you have, because your parents would make sure you had, have you watched the Bill Maher film that's called, it's a really harsh critique of religion worldwide? No, I'm going to look it up and send you a link.
Okay.
I'll send you a link, because I think it's hard to watch, because you can see it's a depiction of religion basically as a fundamentally divisive force worldwide.
Yeah.
Forever and still. So, and it's an old movie. It's got like Religiosity, or I can't remember the name. I'll have to Religulous. But I'll send you a link in case you can find it.
Well, it is interesting what you said, because we did a giant survey with like 500 people, and we got to put in our own questions. So that's how I got the answer to my hypothesis. And it proved that, yeah, conservatives who are more religious vote more often, but that's not true with Democrats, or not
Right.
just also like how much of an influence that has on their political identity. So you actually have kind of.
It's interesting. That's interesting. I'll make a hypothesis that capitalism has something to do with that too. A lot of people have an ideological belief that they're not willing to act on if their own checkbook is affected adversely, whether it's taxation or living wage or other issues. So that can be your next study.
I did ask asked you about like what formed your political identity, and the one conservative that I've talked to said that it was like his money, basically. And it's so funny.
Well, that's honest.
Yeah.
It's honest. I know people who will say that, like they vote on only their individual things that affect their individual self-interest.
Yeah. That.
See, and you're shaking your head because you would be constitutionally unable to do that, as would I.
Yeah.
That's also why you would be vaccinated, as would I. Even if we live in a bubble, we're going to understand we have responsibility to the people around us.
Yeah. Well, that's why I think religion has impacted my own political views. Is just I think it's why I like care about other people, and I am
Mm-hmm.
thinking about myself or my like.
Right.
I mean, I don't know
Right.
yet, but I can imagine in the future like that wouldn't be my primary concern, and I think I would attribute a bit of that to my religion.
And now we're just going to get real deep, because I think that is fundamentally a difference between Judaism and Christianity, and something that from the outside but closely affiliated, because the Scholarship Foundation has 101 years of roots in the Jewish community, and I've been schooled a lot about how that not only the experiences of Eastern Europe and immigration to St. Louis, but also fundamental beliefs of debate, of learning, of, our responsibility to repair the world, even if you're not going to live in it at the point at which the repair
Yeah.
surfaces. So that all, I think, is much stronger as a part of the way in which at least the American Reform Jewish community that I know lives out their religion.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
And
Well,
Christians, I don't think do that quite the same.
sure. Yeah. I've thought about this a little bit, and I'm sort of like having a hard time deciphering between like what's the effect of like the culture that we've built around our religion, and then what really is like the religious text, or maybe those
Mm-hmm.
are kind of
Yeah.
but I'm not sure. I think it could be like Central Reform congregation, and
Right.
the role they are that's possibly played a bigger role than the Torah,
Yeah.
because I haven't even really read the Torah.
Yeah. Yeah. Don't tell your rabbis that. Don't say that around your rabbis. Yeah. Well, maybe it was just you all and not the Torah, but yeah. But yeah, I think that's probably true. And it's also true that culturally, Jewish faith communities have often, because they are minority communities, broadened their reach and their community engagement beyond Jewish boundaries, right? So like the Scholarship Foundation began as a Jewish organization, and probably 20 others in St. Louis did, and eventually served more than just Jewish students, all students.
Yeah.
It doesn't, it no longer is limited. It's a sense of responsibility to a bigger community.
Yeah.
I think Christianity has often gotten stuck in sort of like this exclusionary thing, like you're in, like there are things I am embarrassed about by Christianity. And one is this idea that unless you were, baptized, you're going to hell. Like, okay, come on. What? I don't know. That sort of thing, like you're Christian or you're not, is this exclusionary thing that I don't feel the same way culturally in interacting with
Sure. Yeah.
the Jewish community.
And in your like position of leadership at your church, have you tried to influence that?
Yeah. And it too, I mean, it's right down the street from CRC. We're 2 blocks east of CRC. So we share a Sunday lunch program. We do all sorts of things together as congregations. So
Yeah.
it's also a very progressive liberal activist, it's okay if you don't read the Bible kind of community.
Yeah.
So,
Okay. Do you have anything else that you want to add about politics?
No, it's been great to chat with you.